Another big story for us today. ISIS certainly garnering a lot of headlines, but there are big developments on the terror front now linked to al-Qaeda, as Abid Nasir becomes one of the first terror suspects presented with evidence seized during the 2011 raid where Osama bin Laden was killed. Nasir on trial in federal court in New York today, where he stands accused of plotting to attack a shopping center and newsroom in Europe, as well as the subways in New York City. Only a few years ago, these plots were hatched. His name appeared on paperwork found at bin Laden's hideout in Pakistan. That's where nearly 4 years ago, Navy SEALs staged that daring raid. It took 15 minutes to reach the house in the compound, another 3 minutes to find and kill bin Laden. Once bin Laden was dead, the mission shifted to intelligence gathering. That was the bulk of the raid. It took 20 minutes, and that's when the treasure trove of terror documents were found. The SEAL teams risking their lives to not only find bin Laden, but the additional intelligence that may illuminate his influence and strength of al-Qaeda. Right after bin Laden was killed and all that terror data was discovered, the president and his team repeatedly said that core al-Qaeda is no longer a threat, a comment he recently echoed late last year.
But here's what I want every single one of you to know. Because of you, this 9/11 generation of heroes has done everything asked of you and met every mission tasked to you. We are doing what we set out to do. Because of you, Osama bin Laden is no more. Because of you, the core al-Qaeda leadership in Afghanistan and Pakistan has been decimated.
The comment about core al-Qaeda leadership is what we're paying close attention to, and we're learning that it may not be decimated, as the president says. Take a listen.
There's a lot of information in there that goes back to 2011 when UBL was killed. After that, the administration almost issued a death certificate for the al-Qaeda and said it's essentially over, they're on the run. But when you exploit the documents, what you find out is UBL very much in charge of his network. It's spreading in different places in the world. He obviously had a relationship with the Pakistani government. The intelligence service was shielding him and protecting him in that location. He's got a relationship with Iran. He desires to go back to Afghanistan if the Taliban takes over. A lot of issues there associated with him, but mostly what it showed is UBL, despite the fact that he was hiding in plain view, was still very much in charge of al-Qaeda, using a courier to do it, as we've all become familiar with. And the fact of the matter is that organization was growing. It was not collapsing, as the administration was suggesting. So the view from people inside the government is that pushed back on their narrative, and therefore they have kept a clamp on this information.
General Keane on our show yesterday. In the last 24 hours, in my own reporting, I've learned that there is great concern about those documents. And that's something that Steve Hayes of the Weekly Standard has been covering for the last several weeks. In fact, he's one of the first people to shine a light on this story. In an article in the end of January, Steve Hayes writes this: there were letters between Osama bin Laden and other terrorist leaders, plans for future attacks, details about fundraising successes and failures, descriptions of relationships between al-Qaeda and governments in the region. The documents remain unexploited to this day. The documents in the raid, the bin Laden raid, remain unexploited until today. Steve Hayes will be here live during the next hour of Happening Now with much more on what we're discovering is a very important story. John?